Hey there guys, SaintsKnight here. Welcome you guys back to the channel here with another TV show review. And today's going to be a controversial one because we are going to be talking about the 6th and final season of the Netflix original show, the first Netflix original show, House of Cards. Now, normally it is at this point where I say that there's going to be zero spoilers in the review. But having spent hours and hours and hours trying to rewrite this script in a way to actually try and keep it from being spoiler free was impossible. And every time I would just burst into a rant and would just get out spoilers. I mean, this is the 5th time that I actually am filming this, so I'm going to say right now that I'm going to issue a spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen House of Cards, then all I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put a time skip right here to say like where in the video you should skip to. So if you haven't seen House of Cards yet, go to this part in the timeline. But anyway, so yeah, and if you haven't seen it, I'd say go watch it, but I don't know. Anyways, without further ado, that's the spoiler warning issued, so for those of you that are still here, let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do want to keep seeing these reviews on the channel, you know what to do. Don't forget to smash the thumbs up button. So without further ado, let's dive into Season 6 of House of Cards. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I would say that House of Cards is my favorite Netflix show ever, or just like one of my most favorite TV shows of all time. I mean, it's got good political intrigue, it's got good characters, and a lot. I mean, and actually, you know what? To balance this off, I'm going to start this off with things that I like about this season. Now, if you don't know what happened, basically at the end of the last season of House of Cards, Frank Underwood, who was the main character until now, but we'll get into that later, was president, and he had no choice but to resign, which then left the turns for his wife, Claire Underwood, to actually pick up the reins. And that's where this picks up, I think, about a couple of months after the events of season 5. Yeah, a couple of months afterwards. And let's just say that not everyone is keen on Claire being the president of the United States. I mean, from old ally Douglas Stamper, who at the last season confessed to Zoe Barnes' murder, just to take the attention away from Frank, because they thought that he did it and all that. So yeah, there's Mark Usher, who is now Vice President of the United States after siding with their enemies in the last season, turning on them at the last moment, and then joining Frank and Claire. Well, mainly Frank, but Claire sort of ropes him in. But anyways, and 2 new characters who were who just introduced this season: Bill and Annette Shepherd. Who Annette was a friend of Claire's, and Bill is her brother. Now, I'm going to start off with the positives first. The first positive for me is that this season, it doesn't really matter if you haven't seen seasons 1 to 5 of House of Cards, because it feels like a different show. And so I guess a good thing would be that it's more welcoming for newcomers of the show, which is a bit of a good thing, although I don't know if this is the right season to start with, but it's still a good way to actually start off. And as well as that, a standout character for me throughout this entire season was Doug. Michael Kelly, who does a fantastic job of portraying Doug the Stamper, who has done so for the for seasons 1 to 5, and now in season 6. He was probably my favorite character. He was the best acted. He had the best dialogue, and honestly, if Michael Kelly doesn't win either like an Emmy or Golden Globe or just like win an award for this performance, I don't know what, because this was Doug Stamper's best season. Like, this was Michael Kelly's best season for me at least. Another thing that I found to be quite good was the side characters. I mean, the new characters that got added, Annette and Bill, are actually great. I don't want to say antagonists because there's polar opposite for Claire to actually like get over, and their characters are actually quite good. I liked Mark. Actually, I liked Bill, and I liked Annette. Also, I really liked Mark Usher as well, who I will be honest, last season I didn't particularly like Mark, because I felt that he was like a one-dimensional Doug character. I thought that he was like Seth Grayson, who's in this season as well. I felt that like he was like Seth Grayson, because to me, I thought that Seth, like in his early seasons, was basically just a replacement for Doug, whilst Doug like took care of himself. But now I'm glad to see that Mark is actually is a properly fully developed character, and I love where his storyline is actually like who should he side with? Should he side with the Shepherds? Should he side with Claire? And well, where would it veer off? And where he ultimately ends up, I feel like it's an appropriate thing for him. I mean, I feel like it's appropriate for him to actually like be rushed out, crash and burn, and all that sort of stuff. And that's what they do here. And they do the guy who plays Mark Usher, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he does a fantastic job of portraying Mark Usher in this season. So those are the positives out of this. However, before I address the cons, we have to have a serious talk about something. If you guys have watched the older seasons of House of Cards, and you watch this season, you will immediately spot one thing missing. It is a big, glaring thing that was a huge presence in the show. I am talking, of course, about Kevin Spacey. Now, I understand that Netflix had to get rid of him. I understand that they had to do House of Cards without him, even though they shouldn't, because he was the main character and it was Frank's story. But I'm getting off track. I get all that, and I get that the focus for this final season. I get that the focus of this final season should be Claire. However, if you get rid of a main character from a TV show, you always run the risk of either alienating the audience or not putting him off in a silent way. Actually, in a good, decent way. Like a way that would be befitting to his character. So, with that, what do I think about how they handled Kevin Spacey's, like, the reason why Frank is, like, not in this season? A lot of people will have their own opinions. A lot of people will have their own thoughts. However, you clicked on this video for my opinion. It's my judgment, and I have to say I was a little bit hesitant on this. I didn't like it, but I was like, I'll watch it anyway because House of Cards is my favorite show. Well, one of my favorite shows. So, it is my honest opinion. So with that being said, I believe that the way that they show, actually the way that they explained Frank's absence is stupid! Okay? I'm sorry, but this is where I'm going to get into a rant. Kevin Spacey, I get that all that was... Basically, if you haven't seen this season, this is why I issued a spoiler warning, by the way. The reason why Frank isn't in this season is because he died off screen. Now, let me remind you, this is a man who survived a gunshot, a heart attack, an assassination attempt, and he dies of a heart attack. Now, I get that. This is a man who survived all that and yet he dies of a heart attack. And I don't... And what's more, Netflix have said that, like, oh, we need to... Actually, we're trying to distance ourselves from Frank. Yes, they do that. So why the hell is Claire speaking to the audience like Frank does? I mean, she did do it once. Or twice. But that's it. Claire to me, I feel like is a cardboard copy of Kevin Spacey, actually of Frank Underwood, but worse. I mean, don't get me wrong, Robin Wright, good actress, she played Claire well. However, if the character of Claire isn't a strong enough foundation to actually keep the season, to keep the show, the season on her shoulders, to keep all that weight on it, then you can tell it's going to suffer. And that is House of Cards' biggest problem. It feels empty. It feels... Let me put it this way. It felt... When I heard that Kevin Spacey was out of House of Cards, I felt like that you would have taken a big thing. You would have taken the best thing about the show, taken it out, you would have had a big hole to fill. Which, I get why that you would have gotten Robin Wright, because at the end of that season it felt like it was going to be more onto her. But I wanted, like, to know, like, how Frank would actually deal with, like, his training, how he could, like, claw his way back, and all that sort of stuff. However, casting Diane Lane and I believe Greg Kinnear as Bill and Annette does not fill that gap. And Robin Wright certainly does not fill that gap left by Kevin Spacey. And I'm sorry, but Claire is still an unlikable character. I didn't like her in the first season. I didn't like her in the first 5 seasons. And she's more unlikable now. It's like they're trying to make her. I feel like that the makers of House of Cards, well, the showrunners now, because I think the old one actually left at season 5. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this is going to go down like a lead balloon as well. I can immediately see the hate comments, and the dislikes skyrocketing. But I don't care. It's my video. I'm going to say it as it is. They've made Claire into Hillary Clinton. They made her too much like Hillary Clinton, and I get House of Cards is political, but there is a certain fine line that you go to, and they cross it with this. And it also doesn't help that if you're trying to distance yourself away from Frank Underwood, from Kevin Spacey, if you're trying to do that, Netflix, here's a question for you. If you're trying to distance yourselves from Francis Underwood and Kevin Spacey, then why in every single episode do you need to have a mention? Francis is dead, Frank's dead, Frank's dead, Frank's this, Frank's that, Frank's that. Stop, Rebecca! You need to tell us once, or at most twice. Not once or twice every single episode. And there's about 8 episodes, so about, I'd say about... So I'd say roughly, at minimum, 16 times they tell us that Frank's dead. And I know that he's dead. We know that he's dead. If we had watched the first episode, we'd have known that he was dead. We get that. However, actually, and the final thing that I didn't like about it is the ending. So after about 6 years of being on this ride of Claire, Frank, Doug, and everyone, after spending 6 years building to the final episode of House of Cards, that the culmination of 6 years, having it all hinder on one episode, 6 years of development, and how does it end? It basically ends with Claire getting away, and Doug, and the best character in this show now, Doug, dying. And what really is a kick in the teeth? What really is a kick in the teeth? That I was rooting for Doug. I was rooting that Doug would actually get her out. He would get her. It seemed like Doug was going to win, and yet at the last moments, I will admit, I will give it this. It had good acting from both Robin Wright and Michael Kelly from both. Actually, from that final scene, it was probably the best scene of the entire show. But it was so unsatisfying, and it left a bitter aftertaste in my mouth that I couldn't really get behind it. And it's wrong for me to say because Robin Wright's character, actually because Claire was pregnant, but I just wish that Doug had actually just killed her. Then, I turned to the camera and just went, my turn. And just did the wee double knock that Frank does. Because it would have been it would have been a satisfying way, because because Frank warned him about Claire. He knew, Doug knew that Claire would turn into a monster. And she did. And it would have been so satisfying because it would have been like the culmination. Actually, it would have just been like Kevin Spacey. It would have been just like the second spawn of Frank actually coming in and actually perfecting his transformation into Frank Mark II, which would have been a more believable one than Claire's transformation into Frank 2.0, which, I'm sorry, but that's what she is. She's just a carbon copy. Not a good one as well. So that's my rant out of the way. So before I destroy everything else, I'm gonna move to the final verdicts. Now I'm gonna say this. If this were any other TV show, this would have gotten a 3 or 2 out of 10. It would have been garbage. But because of the side characters, because of Michael Kelly's performance as Doug Stamper, because it's more easier for newcomers to actually get into, it gets put up to a 5 out of 10. It's an average. It's average season. I mean, I like House of Cards. I love this show. And it's a good thing that it's ending now, before it actually turns out to be quite bad. 5 out of 10 is what I give season 6, the final season of House of Cards. So those are my thoughts. What do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Whatever your thoughts, whatever your opinions, leave in the comments down below. And apart from that, I'm afraid it is now time to end today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, Be sure to smash a thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and if you're not new, then do not forget to click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to get notified on all upcoming videos. And until the next time, guys, we'll see you in the next video. So until then, it's your boy SaintsKnight here, signing off. Peace.